Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines. We're very pleased to have on the show the former governor of the state of Louisiana, Buddy Roemer. The governor is going to talk to us about where we find ourselves today in the state and the federal economies. He has expertise in this area because he graduated from Harvard with a master's degree in economics and banking. So join us on the next Legal Lines with former Governor Buddy Roemer.
Want to learn the secret to big savings on TV, internet, and phone? It's bundling your services with Cox. When you bundle with Cox, you get digital cable, high-speed internet with Power Boost, and telephone, all for one low monthly price. That's 3 fantastic services at one low price that will make you smile. The secret is out. The more you bundle, the more you save. So get a whole lot and save a whole lot when you bundle with Cox.
Welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and I'm very pleased to have on the show today Governor Buddy Roemer. Governor, thank you so much for being on Legal Lines.
Thanks, Locke. It's good to be here. Just don't ask me any legal questions, Locke.
Not a problem.
Really.
I know you got expertise in a lot more important areas based on what we're dealing with today. Let's just briefly tell the folks a little bit about your educational history, because it's unique in the sense that it really has given you an expertise to comment on the issues that our local government, state and federal governments are dealing with.
Good. Well, I attended public school in North Louisiana. I'm from Bossier Parish.
Valedictorian.
Oh, Lord, I wasn't going to bring that up, and I deny it. But I did. I was valedictorian of my high school, Bossier High School. I went to Harvard at a young age. I was 16. I majored in economics. Then I went to the Harvard Business School and majored in banking and public finance. Got my MBA in 1967. I'm 66 now, came back to Louisiana, and I've been here basically ever since. So my formal education was in the area of macro and microeconomics and in business formation and finance. And it has become relevant in the world today.
Well, and I was going to say, and it was from one of the preeminent schools in our nation and frankly the world. So I think
they think they're a lot better than they are, Locke, so don't build them up.
Well, bottom line is we want to hear what you have to say about the circumstances that our state and really first our federal government, the United States, finds itself in.
Well, 2 points, if I could make them right quick, and then we can discuss them.
Yes, sir.
First of all, I think Louisiana is well situated. It's in the right country. I'd rather be in America than anywhere else.
Amen.
For business particularly. And we're at the heart of the Gulf South, from Texas to Florida. And as an economist, I look across the country and look at the far west, too hot, too dry, no water, no oil and gas, overcrowded, taxes too high. I look at the Midwest. There's no manufacturing, about a 40% unemployment rate, no oil, no gas, not much water, landlocked. I look at the northeast part of the country, too many lawyers, excuse me, too many students, too many entertainers. They don't want to make anything. The 2 parts of the country that are going to do well in the next 25 years are the Atlantic coast, from Virginia and Maryland down to Florida. I like where they are. Their education system's good. They don't have the water, oil, and gas that we do, but they have a good work ethic, that low taxes, and they want to produce. And the Gulf South. 8 deep water ports, straddling the Mississippi River, natural gas better than any other part of the country. I mean, we got everything going for us. So the first point I want to make, and it's the reason I started a bank here, is that I think the Gulf South, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, northern Florida, Tennessee, Arkansas, I think that's where the country's going to grow for the next 25 years.
Interesting.
Yeah, I like being here. The only thing that can stop us, I think, by the way, we have good leadership. In Louisiana, we have a governor that's young and fresh. I like this guy.
And you support Governor Jindal.
He irritates me sometimes, but heck, every governor does that. So he's not going to do it my way. I think he's going to do it our way. And I like that.
Interesting. Now, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean that he doesn't have an agenda of 1, 2, 3, and it has to be done that way. I think he has. I think he listens a lot. I like that. You know, he started the practice of going around to small towns around Louisiana.
That's how he got elected.
I'm telling you. And I wish I had thought of it. I mean, I would drive through a town and visit with somebody at the grocery store, but he does it very formally.
Methodically, right.
Yes, very methodically. And I think it's going to make him a better governor. I think he's a better governor in his second year than he was his first year. You know why? I think he's listened to more people. So that's what I mean about having the flexibility and the focus to listen and then execute the job plan. But back to the region. We have a state that's perfectly located. We have a state with good young leadership in Congress, in the legislature, and at the governor. We have a state that's not ridden with corruption or scandal.
And you frankly rode to your governorship under that
Fighting
flag.
the same,
That's right.
You know,
the Roemer reform.
Most people would never come to Louisiana. They only know us by our reputation. And with some governors, all they did is laugh at us. Well, they're not laughing anymore. And I give Bobby Jindal and those of us who worked hard to do that, I give us a lot of credit. But once again, my first point is we're in good shape as a state. We've got hurdles. We've got budget imbalances, tough decisions. We need to make some changes in higher education structure, and we could talk about that later on another show.
Right.
But I like where Louisiana is. But number two I want to make, the thing that is a danger to us is if the country as a whole does not get its act together and do its financial and fiscal and monetary policies in long term so that we can create jobs in this country.
We got a problem here then.
We got a problem in America. And the problem is we're spending money we don't have in an unfocused way, and it will lead either to a mountain of debt or taxes on the increase. And John Kennedy pointed out, a pretty good economist, pointed out 50 years ago, a rising tide lifts all boats. And the best way to get the tide up, and what Kennedy did, was lower the tax rate on capital gain.
You're talking about President John Kennedy.
Yes, I'm not talking about Ted. I'm talking about the man who's no longer with us. Well,
That's
neither
right.
are now. But I'm talking about John Kennedy, who is a young man I really liked as a president. Well, we've come 50 years now, and we're having to learn these lessons again. This year, President Obama has recommended, and the Congress has passed, about $2 trillion of spending that we don't have. The budget's out of balance that much, and they're borrowing all that money. At the turn of the century, 2000, we had borrowed $2.1 trillion as a nation. That was our national debt. Do you know what our national debt is now? $14.3 trillion.
And they just raised it last week
From
$2 trillion.
From 13 to 14.3 trillion. Now, in 10 years, we've gone from 2 trillion to 14. We're out of balance.
We're out of control.
We're out of control. Federal spending is out of control. Now, we want to create jobs in America. The enemy of jobs is federal spending too big, debt too large to borrow that money, and the jobs growth will slow down. And that's why we're in trouble as a country. And the president can talk about taking a small portion of the budget and putting a freeze on it, but it was only 16%
Right.
locked.
And it doesn't even go into effect until
next
11.
year. Next year. We need to do it now. I mean, I would vote against Bernanke as going back to the Fed.
But he's there.
I would vote against the increase in this federal spending and raising the debt. I think it's time for somebody to say, we love you, America, but we can't finance all these programs. We'll do the ones that are critical. We'll invest in our children, and we'll quit spending federal money like we're doing now.
Well, let's talk about exactly what you would recommend if ears are open to make that happen on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines and Governor Buddy Roemer. We'll be right back.
Everybody loves On Demand from Cox. Well, did you know the love's about to grow? Soon, your on-demand menu will have a whole new look, making it easier than ever to find your favorite shows, access hundreds of movies, and thousands of free programming choices, even HD. Just like that, so you can watch what you want to watch, when you want to watch it. It just keeps growing better every day. See what's coming on demand and get more out of what you're into with Cox Digital Cable.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm very pleased to have on the show today Governor Buddy Roemer. Again, Governor, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Locke. Should I shake your hand again, or
We're
is
good.
once enough?
Once is enough. Let's talk about, you've identified the problems. How are we going to fix this?
Well, it's not going to be easy, and both parties have been guilty of mismanagement and lack of discipline. You know, just because I'm a Republican, I'm not going to say that the Democrats are out of control. They are, but the Republicans have been out of control too. I mean, the first half dozen years of George Bush were unbelievable. You know, I forgave him somewhat because we were fighting 2 wars and all this kind of stuff, but enough already. I think we need to spend money on critical things, and fighting the terrorist is one of them. I could do that. I have no problem with that. But we're spending money now that we don't have. Somebody asked me the other day, well, they're spending our tax money, buddy. No, they're not. They've already spent our tax money.
Yeah, they're spending my children, my grandchildren.
Our grandchildren's savings. So what would my recommendations be? Let me give you 2 or 3. One, I would have a multi-year budget. Right now we budget 1 year at a time. And it's like we start over every year and nothing ever finishes, so we don't focus on it. It would be like you would build a building that took you 8 years to build, but you'd put the budget together once every year. It doesn't work like that.
You can't plan.
You need an 8-year budget. Well, why don't we have a 4-year or a 5-year budget?
Why don't we have a 4 or 5 year
I can't answer
budget?
that. I don't have a good answer
I mean,
for that.
I guess politics?
It has to be. I was in Congress 8 years. I used to submit my own budget, Locke. I got more votes than President Reagan did, or the Democrats.
On your budget?
On my budget. It was simple. It was easy to understand. They could do this, Locke. If they decided to quit making points against each other, if they decided to not worry about their reelection,
It seems like
if they
that's it.
decided to put their country first. You know how I got elected to Congress in 1980? I walked across my district. We had a project from the federal government that was going to be $4 billion. It was to make the Red River navigable. Remember that project?
I do, now that you're saying that.
I said, guys, I'll give this project back. I will ask every congressman to give back one project, and we'll balance the budget.
And you balanced the state budget 3 years in a row.
Absolutely. Governors have to do that. That's the Constitution. But back to the federal budget. It can be done only over a several-year period. Let's see the several-year budget. Don't give me one budget and say, we'll get to that next year. Show me a multi-year budget, number one. Number two, go across the aisle to the other party and let's ask for sacrifice for America's behalf. Listen to Scott Brown, this young man that got elected
Extraordinary
in the Democratic
Massachusetts.
state
That's right.
of Massachusetts.
Ted
this
Kennedy's
Republican.
old seat.
Exactly. What did he talk about? He talked about spending our money where we needed to on military defense and on protecting the country. And he said everything else was up for negotiation. We were going to cut back. The best way to compete is to cooperate. We're running out of our competitive strength with the rest of the world. I would ask our parties to cooperate when it comes to creating jobs and putting America back to work. A multi-year budget, everybody give up a project that's not essential. Let's take the long-range view. Let's cut taxes on small business. You'll lose a little money at first, but when they blossom, the country blossoms.
Right.
Kennedy proved that. Ronald Reagan proved that. This president, this Congress ought to look like that. Now, finally, I think we need leadership. We need somebody, somewhere, sometime, some way to stand up and say, if I don't get reelected, it's fine with me. Here's what I'm going to do. As your congressman, as your senator, as your president, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask us to do this right. Lower taxes, lower regulation, let business bloom, and let's be competitive in the world again.
What do you think? That makes term limits just scream in my head, because really what we're saying is that this ain't rocket science. We know what we need to do, but politics is getting away because each person is more concerned about their own individual interests instead of the public's.
We had a United States senator in Louisiana, she shall go nameless, who got 300 billion, I think it
Million,
was.
I believe.
I lose million, billion, trillion.
Trillions,
I think
I know.
it was 300 billion in a health care bill that no one read, but she enabled it to pass the Senate. She voted for it because she got 300 billion for Louisiana. Well, that was money we deserved anyway. That was money by the former that was coming to us anyway. I don't want her to give up her vote for things that we would have gotten anyway. Does that make sense, Locke?
I understand what you're saying.
Why do we let our politicians trade their vote for money? I want her to stand on principle. I want her to lift every Louisianian. I want her to worry about jobs in our state.
Explain to the folks how reducing taxes ultimately helps everybody.
There's a study done.
The reason I say that, Governor, is the Democratic philosophy is give us your money, we're going to spend it for you.
Yeah.
And we can do it better than you. Whereas for the most part, the Republican strategy is you keep your money and you're going to spend it the most wise and efficient way, and that will benefit others.
Yeah, 26% of our gross domestic product, that's all the business in America, is controlled by the Congress and the federal government.
Just 26.
26%.
That's a big
At the
piece.
height of the Depression, it was 17%. It's only been higher 3 years. That's World War II. I mean, we are out of control. Taxes are the revenue that feeds government. If government is too big, how do you stop it? You lower taxes, because then
They don't have the revenue.
They don't have the revenue.
Well, you would hope, except what they do is they just keep raising the deficit ceiling and borrowing money.
Will come to an end, Locke. Now, it did a little bit last year when there was a paralysis in the government and in the credit markets. But at the end of the day, the United States federal government cannot keep borrowing money from China.
You think the China government is just going to ultimately say, enough's enough, we're not giving you anymore?
They already told the President of the United States that in the last year of George Bush's presidency. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac doing all these mortgages, and the President said they need to be businesslike, let them pay the consequences, and China called the White House, the Prime Minister did, and told the President of the United States that debt is backed by the federal government. That's the way we bought it, Mr. President.
Interesting.
And we expect you to honor it. These are tough times. We need a tough leader.
It's a national security interest, Governor.
It works.
When China tells us what we got to do, we got a problem.
Locke, we're not there yet, but I can see it coming unless somebody stops this flow. We're spending too much money at the federal level. We're borrowing too much debt to pay it. And the job growth is zero, Locke. Let me give you a number. 0.
So where do we go from here?
We need a new plan. And we'll talk about that when we talk again.
All right, well, let's talk about that on the next segment of Legal Lines. This is Locke Meredith with Governor Buddy Roemer. We'll be right back.
Did you know that high-def programming from Cox is free? That's right. Cox gives you a ton of HD channels for no additional cost. Your favorite HD channels, your local channels in HD, and even more HD choices with On Demand, and more being added every day. So get a whole lot more HD for a whole lot less with Cox Digital Cable. Some people still don't have On Demand from Cox.
Impersonators.
Who you calling an impersonator, pal?
No. You insulted him a little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Is there a reason you all aren't using On Demand from Cox? Because I thought you guys would love access to thousands of movies and shows.
Stars don't like to watch. They're all movies.
It's tacky.
Did I mention a lot of it's free?
Free is hot.
Boom.
On Demand from Cox. Perfect for almost everyone.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and again, very pleased to have on the show today Governor Buddy Roemer. Governor,
Good to be here, Locke.
thank you again. Let's take it forward. So we've identified the crisis that seems to be on the horizon, and what needs to be done in terms of a plan to stop it. What do we do?
Let's divide it up. It's too big to get your arms around.
It is.
So let's talk about little parts of it and how it affects me and you. How does it affect Baton Rouge? How does it affect Ascension Parish? The first thing I think we need to start with is spending. Spending is out of control, and we eventually have to pay for that. We pay for it either in higher taxes, which kills business and loses the number of jobs,
right,
and therefore our sons and daughters and neighbors lose their jobs.
And stay in the house with us a lot
Exactly.
longer.
And that's pretty expensive. So we either raise taxes or we borrow money. So let's talk about number 3. We got spending, it's too big. We've got taxes, they need to be lowered.
And they're talking about raising
They're
them.
talking about raising them. It's a mistake, but it often happens first. They'll talk about raising them. I think we can get them to lower it.
Although they are discussing business, some kind of business credit tax.
They are, but I don't think large business ought to get breaks, and small business have no idea of what's
Particularly when
happening.
small businesses, I understand, it generates 70% of the jobs.
It's better than that. It's 80%.
Really?
80% of all the jobs in America in the last 25 years were created by companies with 500 employees or less. Now that's the definition of a small business.
Wow.
At the federal level. 500 is a
really
big,
small
yeah,
business.
really small. Mom and pop, kind of my business. My bank has 80-something employees. That's a small business in America, and we increased 25% last year in the number of jobs. So that's it. And the thing that hurts small business are tax rates and regulatory pressures.
Right.
As you know, I was on the board for years at the Shaw Group. Well, Shaw has its own lawyers and own regulatory people. Small business doesn't have that.
Right.
They have to go hire a lawyer, hire a lobbyist, hire a representative. They can't afford it. So regulations hurt small business. So taxes need to be stable and lower, and regulations need to be stable and less, and that will let small business
And
grow.
just let the people work.
And if President Obama would do that, he would be a hero in the next 2 years. Jobs would blossom. But
There was
the
a
third area is the area of borrowing. And let me talk about that as an old banker. You'd think I'd want to lend money to everybody and think we ought to just loan a lot of money. Well, we've overdone it. The credit crisis of 2 years ago and last year came because we lent money to people, good people, who wanted to buy a house, and we made credit so easy. I say we, the federal government did, Fannie Mae and Freddie
Because they
Mac.
were backing those
Oh,
mortgages.
it was political.
Yeah.
It was political. I mean, Barney Frank and other guys say every American, I mean, even George W. Bush said it. Bill Clinton said it. Every American should own a house. And
Which would be great,
that's
but they got
right,
to be able to
Mr.
afford it.
But shouldn't they be able to afford to pay off the mortgage on that house? So rates were lowered to 4%, 4.5%, and 5%, and people were lent money to buy a $250,000 home. 3 million Americans lent money to buy a $240,000 average home, and they didn't make their first month repayment lock.
I need you to say that again. 3 million people borrowed money and never made the first mortgage payment.
Not one. Not one. And you know, these aren't evil people. They just got sucked in and promoted by some ne'er-do-well mortgage companies, some ne'er-do-well banks, and a federal government that wasn't rooted in reality. And they were given money.
And the reason the banks didn't care is because they sold that paper to the federal government, got their money out.
They were
And
free.
Fannie Mae is sitting there holding a worthless mortgage.
Free. I mean, my job is not to convict somebody. Let me convict the system. I mean, you know, my little bank at $600 million didn't take any federal money. We took no bailout money. We're free and independent. I'm proud of us. We've had a profit for 12 consecutive quarters. We've gone right through this. It's been hard and tough, but we're profitable and growing all over Louisiana. But let me talk about the Wall Street banks, the big boys who should know better. They all are on the federal bailout list.
Right.
They all pay their presidents $5, $10, $15, $20, $35, $40 million. I mean, I think in a free market system, they should do what they want to. But I'll be dadgum if I'm happy as a taxpayer of bailing them out after they do that. They got greedy. They wanted their profits to double and triple. They started lending money to people that couldn't pay them back. And
they didn't care.
They didn't care. They were making money out of it. And they sold that paper overseas. They sold it to another bank. They sold it to whoever
would buy it.
Whoever would buy it. So it was a system gone crazy.
And China bought a lot of it, didn't
China
it?
bought a lot of it, about 60, 70% of that paper. And by God, they're going to get their money back. America's got a problem. It can be solved, Locke. I don't want to be negative here. It can be solved. We need a president to lead. We need a multi-year budget. We need lower tax burden on small business particularly. We need to tell the banks you're not too big to fail. And we need to move on with the free enterprise system.
Governor, tell the folks what's going to happen if those steps aren't taken.
There will be a tsunami at some point of high interest rates coming toward us. I'm old enough to remember Jimmy Carter as president. We went through a smaller version of this. Hello? A smaller version of this. High taxes, high regulation, low productivity, low job creation. A recession came and interest rates went to 21% on the prime.
In fact, I read today that Bernanke, who is the Fed chairman, is now talking about steps that he and the Feds are going to start taking to pull the money out of the system, which is going to result in the interest rates going up.
Look, I'm not negative. It can be done. But we need a plan. We need to tell everybody what the plan is, and we need 3 or 4 years to get it done. And we can't wait until next year. Now, Mr. President, lead.
Governor, do we have 3 or 4 years?
I don't think so.
So if you're advising just Blow Joe who has a house mortgage and credit card debt and such, do you tell them you need to pay off that debt as soon as possible because those interest rates they're gonna go
They're
up?
going high, yeah. If you got a good 30-year mortgage at 5% or 4 3/4,
Hang on to that.
Hang on. Don't give it up.
But get rid of your
And
other
I
debt.
don't think this is going to happen tomorrow, but it's happening already.
Do you see any leader on the horizon that you think has
I've gone with
enough
Scott
wherewithal?
Brown now from Massachusetts. Throw deep, man. Well, there are plenty of good leaders. A guy named Pat Ryan is in the Congress. He's from up in Wisconsin or Minnesota. Remember that name, Pat Ryan. I like what he's doing. He's trying to put his own budget plan together.
What about Democrats? Do you see any Democrats who are fiscally conservative and willing to tackle this in a fair way?
You know, I've been out of politics so long, thank goodness, that I hadn't worried about people or personalities in Washington. I'm sure the Democrats have some. I mean, I was a Democrat when I was in Congress.
That's right.
It's a party of pride. But I am so proud to be a part of the Abraham Lincoln Party now.
Governor, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks,
we
Locke.
really appreciate it. This is Locke Meredith on Legal Lines and Governor Buddy Roemer. Thank you for being with us.